Welcome to the Building to Scale podcast, where we bring real entrepreneur stories that showcase the challenges and successes in building and scaling an entrepreneurial business. Our host, Jeff Chastain, is a business transformation coach with Admentis, where he coaches business leaders and their teams with a proven set of principles and tools, helping them gain clarity in and get more of what they want from their business. Make sure to stick around until the end of the show, and we will reveal how you can become our next guest.
Hello, everybody. Jeff Chastain here with another episode of the Building to Scale podcast, where I get the opportunity really just to exchange stories with other business entrepreneurial leaders and influencers here. So today's guest with me is Mark Ainley with GC Realty, Reality and Realty, close enough, GC Realty out of Chicago. So Mark, first off, thanks for taking a bit of your time out here to join us and share some expertise.
Well, I did do a reality show once, so reality did fit into my bio at one point. But yeah, thank you for having me. You know, I love your show. I love what you're doing here for other entrepreneurs. So it's exciting to be part of that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's always just fun hearing stories, kind of thing we were talking beforehand. And it's just a conversation about business, and everybody's got their own slant, their own story as to how they got into it. So I guess kind of lead that way in. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your story here.
You know, I went to, I'm, we're out of Chicago. We currently have a property management / brokerage, real estate brokerage company. Our focus is on real estate and investing when it comes to both sides, obviously with the property management and the brokerage. But we started back in 2003. And I'll tell you this, we started the business with one idea and went 4 or 5 different directions before we kind of found ourselves to where we're at today. You know, we actually started off wanting to be a industrial brokerage company. And then the first listing we got was like a luxury home. And we actually sold both sides of that deal for any real estate agents out there. We had dual agency, and our first commission was like $55,000. So we're like, wow, we're in the luxury home business. We never had a luxury home listing ever again. And then we went into, just a lot more investment side of things. You know, back then, 5, 6, 7, a lot of people were getting into or trying to be real estate investors. So we worked a lot with investors. Helping them find a property. We'd rehab it for them, and then we sell it for them. So we kind of made money every step of the way. And that's kind of how we learned a lot about the real estate flipping business and rehabs and so forth. So, it wasn't until probably, my partner now jokes around me that I used to stand up at like a networking group and be like, when I'm giving my elevator pitch, I would say, we'll do this, we'll do that, and we'll change your oil on the weekends. Like we tried to do anything. And that was important for us in 2008, 9, 10, when kind of the market came to a halt, we were able to kind of pivot. Because we were able to be flexible, do a little of anything, we were able to still make it through the downturn. But it was still 2013, 14, where it's like, wow, we actually have a property management company here. We actually need a process and we need some policies, and we need to put some organization in place. So, and ever since then, we've been growing ourselves as a property management company, and it's been exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting here because a lot of times you hear like the business coaches or whatever always come out and say, well, you got to find your niche and make sure you focus exactly on your niche, put all your resources there. But the reality is I hear a lot more stories like yours where it's like, okay, we effectively came out of the gate aiming for anything and everything, anybody that give us some money at that point, kind of a thing, any deal. And the niche almost kind of finds you. Has that been kind of your expertise there or experience?
Yeah, 100%. And the one exciting thing about real estate in general is that there's so many different ways to make money. And it could branch into the actual rehab side, or kind of structure piece, or it could branch into the marketing at the sales side, or even consulting even. There's a lot of real estate consulting out there. So there's so many different things you can do. And, it took us a while, but we actually found what our niche is. Yeah,
well, it's interesting that it kind of, because I've been in the same experience. It's like, okay, I'm not quite sure most industries are like that. It's like there's so many different fragments within the industry you can go hit. It's like, okay, where do I start? But it tends to kind of find you. And it's those weird ones, like you said, with the luxury home. There's like, okay, is this really the right place or not? And it turns out to be a one-off thing.
Well, I think what helped us, so even a step further into what you're saying, is I think we found a need in the market. So, you have 1 million rental properties here in Chicago, and, biggest property manager we know maybe has 20,000 doors. And so there, not only is there room in our space to grow, but at the same time, I hear people complaining every day about how horrible the property managers are. Like, oh, wow, we're doing a pretty good job, and we're not getting those complaints. So we found the need in the market and in that niche to actually see where there could be expansive growth in the future.
No, it makes sense. Yeah. And that's really a case of most of the time there's some sort of need or some sort of problem, something that most businesses address at that point. Most of us don't go into business just for saying, hey, we're going to go create a business and then figure out what in the heck we're going to do. It's usually a need or an idea or something like that first to go into it. So what was I guess back that up. What was your history before the property management company? Was this first entrepreneurial venture or is this third or fourth?
Yeah, so this was probably my first. I mean, I did a whole bunch of entrepreneur things. I mean, from a young age, baseball cards, selling golf balls, fake purses, whatever. We always were trying to find a way to hustle and kind of make some money in a sense. Hustle in a good way. That's a lot of connotation, but kind of just make money and trying to get ahead. My family wasn't wealthy by any stretch of the word. And so I was always just wanting to earn money and create opportunity. So, I got out of college and I got my real estate license. But I was working in, I started in college at a job at a trucking company and kind of worked my way up to mid-level management. And I thought at some point in there, I wanted to be a CEO that ran a company. But as I think it was really the .com boom in 99 and 2000 that said, you know what, the corporate world sucks when things are not going good and crap flows downhill. And I said, you know what, and I saw like the politics behind it. I'm like, I do not like this. So I got my real estate license not long after that. And I said, you know what, maybe kind of working on my own and being my own boss is something that we'll enjoy. Now, I didn't realize how many other things you have to do as being your own boss and accountability and actually trying to grow a business and what growing a business even is. But I realized at a young age that I probably didn't want to work in the corporate world like that, like I originally thought I did.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. I just actually the last episode I was talking with somebody who's like, yeah, most entrepreneurs have got our lane of expertise. We're going to go be an insurance. We're going to go be a realtor. We're going to be whatever. And then realize, oh, there's a whole lot more to this than just realtor right there. Or a lot more than just signing policies and insurance. I've got to go do sales and marketing. I've got to collect on the back end, do finance and all this other stuff, manage people as you've grown kind of a thing here. It changes your focus for sure. So I'm curious, where did the meeting of the partner and starting the new venture come into play?
Well, yeah. So you hit it on the head with managing people. Most people get into business because they're good at anything. I'll reference E-Myth there. And
yeah.
They're good at doing something, but for me, I know I wasn't good at managing people. And later on, it took me many years to be able to work my way out of that or work in a new partner that actually was good at that. So, but we took a bunch of different turns, So we had, I have my current partner now. I actually have two partners, but my current partner came into play in 2006. I originally founded GC Realty with my best friend I grew up with. He was killed in a car accident and then horrible scenario. But I learned buy-sell agreements as far as owning a business at a pretty young age at that point. But my new partner, who's already kind of coming into the business in real estate, started working with me right there in 2006. Again, me and him are a lot alike in the just hustling and working and figuring out different ways to go and where the money's at, right? And that's, I guess, some early advice that I learned looking back is, understanding what partners look like and complementing partners. So when you have two partners there, just kind of go get it, we'll figure it out later type mentality. It's hard to ever really figure it out later.
Yeah.
We then, in 16, actually take it back a little, in 2014, we started doing some real estate investing with a third partner. And little by little, I always tell this joke, he was always kind of giving us really good advice on how to run the management company. And it took a few years, but ultimately we brought him in on the management side to be a partner in GC Realty fully. So now he runs operations. My other partner, he runs the brokerage commercial side of things. And then I run marketing and new business. But the partners kind of, in there, we had another partner that we had a falling out with as well too early on. That's a whole nother lesson learned as well.
Now, partners tend to be lessons learned on all kinds of fronts at that point right there. There's a lot of getting the right one and making sure it's the right fit and the complementary fit and stuff like that. And then, yeah, like you said, the buy-sell agreements, and there's so much going into business with somebody else. Basically, it's like you said, it's a whole nother aspect of outside of your lane of expertise that you got into this with a realtor license, not necessarily to look at legal agreements and partnership agreements and things like that.
Exactly.
So what's been you mentioned people issues and stuff like that, or managing people. I think you said up to 44 team members now. So bit of a transition from yourself and your own license to now managing 44. What's been the change in your role look like, or how's that transition run?
Yeah. So today we have 44 employees. We have another, I think, 21 licensed real estate agents that work on the brokerage side. But, we went through a period where hiring is so crucial, right? And one thing that we did wrong was we never hired soon enough. So we were always hiring 6 months too late and rushing the process. So it's like, and hiring just back then as well too was like, oh my gosh, I like you. I can see myself working with you, and I can see myself having a beer with you. You're hired. And not understanding the right seat on the bus or right fit for the seat on the bus or any of those concepts that we now practice now. But we're always 6 months too late, so we rushed the process, and two, we never really took the interview process serious. So what we ended up with was a bunch of buddies working with us, and now you take a bunch of buddies with a lack of systems or process. Now you run into what we called, in hindsight, we call it the hub and spoke model, where me and Brian, my partner, were in the middle. And the other, we got to about 11, 12 employees like this, where every decision came through us. We never documented any process early on. We never did anything. So it was hard where, we call them gopher, go for this, go for that. Where really everybody in the organization was just simply working off of our actions. And that was definitely not scalable at that point.
Yeah.
And understanding, pretty much of all those 11 people that we originally started with, I think there's only one or two that are really left. But one by one, as we kind of converted to more of a culture of process and systems and all that stuff, they weren't the right fit. and they kind of self-selected themselves. Most of them kind of left like, hey, they were great people, that they helped us get to where we're at to a certain point, but they just weren't wanting to take it to the next level at that point. So we have a totally different process now and how we handle a lot of that hiring and bringing people into the culture. Now when you get to a certain point, and I think at any point, culture ends up being such a big part of the conversation, is just make sure you're bringing the right people into the rest, so the rest of the people are happy with who you bring in. So there's a lot of responsibility as a business owner, I think, on that side of things.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's actually one of the tools that I work with clients on is a mapping. It comes actually out of the top grading system, but it's mapping both cultural fit and productivity fit, because it's the whole A-player model kind of a thing there, that if you get real great cultural fit, not the productivity fit, i.e. the processes, stuff like that, they're great to be around the water cooler with, great to go hang out with after work, but you're not getting a thing done, kind of a thing at that point. It's like, okay, we're in business here to make money at that point. We're not here to run a social club, kind of a thing. So it's what's categorized in that model is the B players at that point, that they're fun, but we got to get some work done too.
Well, I think it was maybe call it 2016, 17, where I walked through the office one day. I think we were maybe about 20, 22 people at that point, and looked around. I'm like, man, if I was in the interview, at that point, they took interviewing away from me for obvious reason. But if I was interviewing any of these people, I probably would not think I would be able to get along with them or whatnot. It's just, we're not people that would have been when we originally hired. Now, don't get me wrong, almost all those people are still here and for the right reasons. But I realized how off I was on the hiring process at that point, where it's like, holy cow, I don't think any of these people I would have hired, but they are the right people I should be hiring. So. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. So I'm curious, can you dive into that anymore in terms of the process for hiring? Because most people don't look at it as a process. They look at it as just, like you said, hey, we had a good conversation. You check a few boxes on the skills chart on the resume, you're hired, kind of a thing there. So what does that look like differently for you now that you've gone through some of the bumps with that?
Yeah, so a lot of what we started doing about 4 years ago, we started using, I'm sure you're familiar with the culture index, and then we moved to predictive index last year or the year before. But, we've been starting to use that as a tool for at least identifying, people really what their strengths are. Are they really about details? Do they really need more explanation? Are they quick starts? Are they really heavy on details? Are they low on details? And we actually used these charts for our existing employees. So we started understanding our strengths and weaknesses within the office as well too. And it's like, all right, if I deliver this to Susie, she's a low D, and we can talk more about that, but she's a low on, it's not good at details. So I got to make sure that she's going to follow through and get this done. Or if I'm going to deliver it to somebody that's high C, I know that they're going to have, they're going to have a lot more questions about, they're not going to be able to just run with it. So a lot of what Predictive Index did for us helped us kind of find more of the right fit for specific roles. And that's been a big player. And for us in the hiring process, you put your ads out, you put it all your Indeed, your different places, but we have people then take the survey, the Predictive Index survey first to help. And to clarify a little, this is kind of, I always explain it, it's kind of like DISC profile on steroids, I guess. And you might have a different opinion on that, but that's kind of what's helped us at least frame up some of the right fit, or at least eliminate some of the people that are way off. For if we need someone that with an assistant in finance, it's got you need details, right? They can't have a low D in that department. So, you weed out 80% of those people that might apply for that.
Yeah, it's interesting because it is very comparable from a DISC standpoint. I guess my history with DISC, it's a great tool, but it's more, you almost have to keep taking DISC over and over, that your personality changes based upon your situation, life, things like that. So your DISC can actually change. I know mine's changed a fair amount over the years, kind of a thing, but Predictive Index and Cultural Index, they seem to be a little bit more accurate of what's the true foundation, what's your true personality, kind of a thing there, that's not necessarily tied as close to current life situation. But the other part I like about it, and you kind of mentioned there, is that you can basically write the profile or create the profile for the role, for the job as well, and then basically do a comparison to say, okay, yeah, this person, because there's not necessarily with Predictive Index, there's not necessarily a wrong personality or anything, but it's like you said, right person, right seat. Make sure that, okay, we're hiring for this seat in accounting, therefore make sure you're detailed oriented, make sure you have the characteristics or whatever there out of your cultural index that matches that. So yeah, I've seen a lot more people using that one, a lot more companies using that. And it's a really incredible tool to, on one hand, make you think about, okay, what does this role require? And then on the other hand, really give you that true data to sit there and map it, rather than just my gut feel of what they said at the interview.
Yeah. And for us, and you could contest this probably, the people that are not the right fit for a position, they'll either struggle, whether it be culture, they'll struggle maybe on the job details, or because they're struggling on the job, they end up struggling culturally. And then ultimately they end up not working out in the long run anyways, which, the not making a good hire or bad hire, the costs or the holdback on really a company's growth. I mean, there's huge numbers when it comes to that. So trying to get it right the first or second time with a particular position is huge for a company's scalability and how quick it happens. Yeah,
no, that's interesting, because I do have people complain because the top grading methodology, top grading system is fairly detailed in terms of the number of interviews, the length of interviews, everything goes into it. And a lot of times I'll have people look at that and say, there's just way too much time involved in an interview process. It's like, yeah, but look at the cost involved in, like you said, making the wrong hire, making the wrong decision at that point.
Yeah. Well, like I said before, our interview process, like, oh man, you're cool. And we need this business really bad because we're 6 months behind. And all those people just cost our company's growth so much. And they're not bad people. It was us as leaders that really messed that process up. And I think we have a role as business owners, CEOs, to kind of put the right people in the right seats for, at the end of the day, we're providing a lifestyle or a career for people, and making sure that they're happy in their lifestyle and career. I think I carry that as a large burden on my shoulders, I think, as far as being responsible for it.
Well, there's definitely validity to it, because it's, on one hand, yeah, you're out serving your customers, but at the same time, as the CEO, as the leader, and that's kind of the transition I see a lot of entrepreneurs almost kind of struggle with, because you go from just being you to, wait a minute, now I'm a parent over all these employees here, kind of thing there. And there's a lot more responsibility to that, and setting up, like I said, setting up the culture, setting up things to make it a good environment for them.
And there's a lot of stuff I've read out there along the lines of, and I believe this is, if you take care of your employees, or the right employees, and you take care of the employees and you train them and you put all your effort into them, then ultimately your customer or customers or different segments of your business, those things will just happen then at that point, because you have the right person with the right training, with the right attitude, that's happy in life, that's happy in their position. All those things are just going to kind of flow downhill. So in a good way.
Yeah, no, it really is. And it's from that kind of mentality, it's really hard to have a better salesperson or a better representative of the company there than somebody that honestly loves their job and loves the mission of the company. It's like, that's perfect voice right there that you'd want, for sure.
Yeah. And there's the dichotomy too. It could go the opposite way if you do the opposite. And I've been down that road too. So I know we perfect with that.
Oh yeah, no, it's a learning journey for sure. So with that idea of the journey into it, how has your kind of culture evolved or gotten created at that point? I know you were talking about culture and defining the right people, kind of a thing. How has that come into play? Because I'm assuming you probably didn't jump out day one and say, okay, here's our culture, here's our values and things like that right off the bat. I'm assuming that was kind of evolved.
Yeah, it did. And one of our biggest core values, which is be responsive, kind of came out of a weird way where last year, or about 2 years ago, when I actually stopped wearing the COO hat, moved solely into running marketing and sales and all that side of the company, I kind of was lost in a way. I'm like, I kind of need some coaching. Like I've always done sales. You take a call between 7 other fires you're putting out. And I'm like, I probably should invest in some actual training. And I went through a sales training process with a coach, and they're always pulling out kind of what separates you or what's your unique abilities and all that stuff. And one of the things that we came up with for the company is that we're just responsive. We're always trying to answer the phone, trying to get back right away. There's automations you can put in place that help you be responsive. And our being responsive is what was born out of that practice just a few years ago. And since then, we've actually trademarked Chicago's responsive property manager. And, we've built a whole bunch of marketing around that. And, it's been huge for us. So that's one of our top core values, and being responsive. So, when we're in the interview process and you tell people, I always like to ask a question: how many emails do you have in your inbox? If they say a couple thousand, it's like, oh, and I tell them right out, hey, listen, you're not going to be a good fit here if you're not going to be able to stay on top of your email, because whether you're being responsive to team members or responsible to our clients, that's going to be a big one. So that's kind of one of the core values that we've tied into the hiring process.
No, and it makes sense. And it's one of those that, because a lot of times I'll see core values evolve and change over time, just as the company evolves. So that's perfect example kind of a thing right there of that as it goes through.
Yeah. And then make it happen is the other, or make it happen or whatever it takes. I always call it make it happen, but whatever it takes is kind of, in property management, you run into those issues at 4:00 on Friday. That's always when it happens. A hot water heater never goes off at 2 PM. It always is in Friday night or Saturday morning. And just kind of making it happen and doing whatever it takes to figure out that problem. Sometimes you got to figure out who's going to pay for it later, but just getting the issue addressed and safety aside and tenant kind of happiness together. So that's the other big one that we build into. And that requires, sometimes going the extra mile. And those are things we have to talk about in the interview process. Like, hey, things will come up at 4:00 on a Friday and you're going to have to deal with it till 5:30 on that day. I mean, are you prepared to be a team player with that stuff?
Yeah. Well, and then it goes back to even saying, okay, this is your image, your value of customer service right there. Like you were talking about you want, obviously your tenants there being happy, feeling like it's responsive, things like that. So that really has to come through everybody, whoever's answering the phone, whoever's delivering the service, et cetera, kind of thing like that. So that's a top to bottom kind of issue, not necessarily just a marketing message right there.
Yeah, no, exactly. And those are words we try to just live by as far as that goes.
Yep. So looking forward a little bit more, what's the future of property realty look like in terms of your mind, in terms of your company right there? What's the trajectory looking at for your company?
So one of the things that excites us about property management is, so let's put it this way. In the United States, it ends up being only about 35% of real estate rentals are professionally managed by a company like ours. And the other, call it 65%, is managed by self-managing. So you might have your own rental, you might handle all your own stuff. Yeah. Now, you take a country like Australia, where it's completely flipped. Australia, about 75% is professionally managed. So you look at that, our industry, and our industry has, and part of that's because our industry has somewhat of a bad rep. You give a property to a property manager, and they're gonna turn into toxic waste, and your tenants are gonna be bad, and they're gonna destroy your house. So the industry has improved itself a lot in the last decade, and it continues to improve itself as an actual viable service. And I think when people are starting to look at, for your house, Jeff, we might only charge $100 a month to manage it, and you might spend 2 or 3 hours. So now starting to younger generation are starting to calculate their time. Like, is it worth 2 or 3 hours to pay $100 and me not have to ever think about it and deal with it? So it becomes less about the service or the risk. It becomes more about how can I get more time in my life back? So that's a big industry shift. Now, at the same time, you take only a couple percent that go from self-managing to managing. There's not enough property managers in the country to handle that type of business, even on a unit basis. So the opportunity is just there to grow. Now, I think when you get into your higher end A and B class type properties, your kind of top grade buildings and neighborhoods, those have tools online that could potentially shift to more tech solutions versus having to hire a property manager. But when you get into the rougher C and D class type neighborhoods or a lot of working class type neighborhoods, a property manager will be needed, and technology won't replace us for a while, I think, on that side of things. So
yeah. Yeah, and really, it's people always look at technology and say, "Well, it's going to replace people." And more than often, I see technology just honestly enhances the people. And it gives you still got to have the personalized customer service. You still got to have honestly somebody that answers the phone there. Probably people don't want an automated system for that. But at the same time, if you can leverage technology to your point of saying, hey, take the 2 or 3 hour manual task of all these different steps. If you can automate some of that, leverage technology there to make you more efficient, then for sure. But yeah, I guess you made the comment about saying, hey, $100 versus 2 or 3 hours of your time. And I definitely see a lot more of that, but it's even still in the business owner kind of seat to say, okay, where's it worth the investment, the delegation to say hire on an assistant or whatever? Because I don't know if you've seen it or you've experienced it. A lot of times with the entrepreneur, we have a hard time, at least early on, giving up some of those hats, some of those pieces there and handing it off. When you really look at it and say, you're spending 3 hours doing a marketing email here that you're not even good at marketing, kind of a thing. That's not your expertise. It's worth the $100 or whatever it costs, kind of a thing, to even go outsource a marketing agency or something like that. Is that wouldn't be a challenge for you, or are you been one of the few unique ones that don't have that issue at all?
Oh, no. So if anything, and it's only extrapolated in my mind, that book that's out now, Who Not How by Dan Sullivan,
Yep.
That is something that, man, if I would have had that 10 years ago, I mean, we would be, it would have been huge, in that sense, where I never put a value to the different tasks. You do a lot of things as a business owner throughout the day. And you might literally go from a $2 an hour task to a $10 an hour task to basically the deal that could change your company's trajectory back to sending $3 an hour emails. And so the putting value on your time and the tasks that you're doing and then delegating it. I mean, there's no better way to grow that. And especially now we have the world that we've discovered at our company, it's just virtual, whether it be virtual assistants or virtual workers. We have I think 12 or 13 people that help us virtually, that they are actually specialized in marketing. They might be specialized in marketing in Mexico, but they specialize in marketing, and I'm able to leverage them than me tinkering around with a MailChimp trying to figure that out. So the who is a lot easier to get a hold of these days than sitting there trying to figure out how. You and me were talking about in before the show, the podcast, we spent 8 weeks trying to figure out how to launch a podcast. I got referred to somebody, and within 8 minutes on her phone calls, she signed us up, did everything, and within 3 more days we were on iTunes. It was some crazy time frame of oh my gosh, why didn't I figure out that there's a who like you out there that could do this for me 8 weeks ago? So it's stuff like that just kind of continues to the opportunities out there, the people out there that want to do things for you and take those things off your plate. And there's no better way than you to just use your highest and best.
It really is. And it's to your point, I think it has become a lot more available because I've seen a lot more and work with a lot more, really even at the executive level on the fractional side, to say fractional sales or fractional CFO. It's small growing business. You don't need your own in-house CFO, especially paying that kind of money, but you still could use the expertise for a few days a week or something like that kind of thing. So having those kind of fractional resources, even at that kind of executive level, all the way down to, like you said, doing email marketing or doing whatever, the lower level task kind of a thing. There's so many resources out there these days that, to me, that's the way. If I was going to go start a brand new business, start over, yeah, you'd be leveraging those anywhere and everywhere you could, just because it's so much more cost effective and spend your time and your expertise in your lane. So always kind of wrapping up or coming back, and I know we've touched on several of these already, but looking at, say, if you could go back 5-10 years, I guess it was 2003, so we're talking closer to 20 years now, and start this over now. What's anything come to mind, or any 1 or 2 things come to mind on saying, hey, if we just known this or tried this earlier?
I think people, I said earlier that we hired too slow, but then we hired too slow and we hired the wrong people. So I think hiring the right people faster. And, I think a lot of business owners juggle the I can't afford them mentality. And I've learned to counter that, or at least justify my own actions by saying, listen, you can hire a $100,000 employee, or you can hire a $60,000 employee, but you only pay them $152 at a time. So if 10 or 15 or 20 grand into this, they don't work out, or you're not seeing the value in them, then you get rid of them. And that was your money invested, and you probably learn a whole bunch of lessons along the way. So investing in the right people earlier to kind of really take you to where your goals are. Now, another thing for us, we put in place management tool Traction for us for kind of just managing our data, our we on our leadership side of things, and then now our departments now run that management tool, and that has been a huge way for us to really gain, no pun intended, traction for all the things that got to be done as a company grows. When you're growing your company, there's just so many shifts and so many, literally people are like, if I try this, it might not work. And I always tell people, you're right, it probably won't work. So you got to try it, get past it, and then move on to the next thing, and that thing will work. So being able to pivot and move just kind of takes a whole bunch of people get on the same page, and it takes certain meetings and levels of meetings and efficiency of meetings to be able to get all those things, get your hands around those things to get them done.
Yeah, I forget what the saying was or whatever, but basically, if you try something, it's a 50-50 shot of whether it's going to be right. If you don't try at all, it's a guaranteed 100% failure rate at that point, kind of a thing there. So it's worth at least trying, because, yeah, to your point, 50% of your ideas are going to fail there, but you got to go through those in order to find the other 50% that work. So business is always a trial and error. Unfortunately, we don't have nobody comes up and says, here's the playbook on your property management company, build it from scratch and just follow this playbook and you'll be completely successful.
Exactly.
So I'm curious, what got you into Traction or into looking at systems? Because in all reality, there's all kinds of systems. I think you'd mentioned eMyth already before out there. So how did you land on Traction, or figure out, hey, we wanted to find this one, or wanted a system?
Well, I think there was kind of a path of books that kind of motivated me. I think the first one was eMyth. That got me kind of thinking like, oh my gosh, he's so right. And I think 3 or 4 listens to that later, then I found a book, Work the System, which is about a company, basically a guy that almost pushed it to the end, couldn't make payroll, and then realized just how to systematize things and the clear path of how to systemize things. So that was another book that kind of came into play. And then, for us, we got to that point. I was telling you earlier about the hub and spoke, where it's like, my partner, Brian, came, he's like, why are things such a mess? Or why are things why is everyone, everyone's running around with their heads cut off? I said, because we're managing 250 properties and 1 million square feet of commercial. And we don't even have a system in place. We don't even have a process in place in writing. Like literally, it's all in yours and my head. And then a couple of them have figured it out over the years. So, realizing how easy it is to document certain things and all that is kind of what pushed us towards that. And then ultimately, getting into Traction, we just realized we need some organization. I realized my meetings, I hated my Monday morning meetings. I wanted to shoot myself like after that. And I can only imagine how everyone else in there that was not a true stakeholder felt having to come to my Monday morning meetings. So just understanding where we were at. And I had the wrong people in those meetings as far as, we had everybody in there, down from the guy that did the cleaning to the person that was supposed to run our book. So like I had the wrong even meetings running. So when we read Traction, I think that was just I think that was in 16 and we implemented in 17. I think that was just such a big eye opener for us, and it literally helped us really take off.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, with Traction, was it just purely reading the book and following it yourself, or did you bring in somebody outside for that one?
No, so we brought in somebody outside. I'm a big believer in, I'm not a big believer in self-implementation. So, I think, you hire somebody, have them come in there, help you through it. There's a lot you don't know, and you never know what you don't know. So having someone do that, and then also means that everybody on your team can be part of the process. There's not one person that has to spend so much time trying to figure out what to do for the meeting, how the meeting's running. And the person that's there facilitating can also kind of call BS on people there that maybe someone else in the room is afraid to call. So, and even down to our quarterlies, we just had our quarterly meeting and we still had somebody come out and do that for us as well too. So I'm a big fan of, I think that's it's a small dollar to invest, even though it looks like big on paper, for what you end up taking away from that 1 day or 2 day event.
Yeah, it really is. And it was interesting. I was just actually reviewing another podcast episode and he was talking about more of a board of directors type, but it's like that mentality. Most times as the entrepreneur, we've got the shiny object syndrome kind of a thing there. Oh, let's go try this. Let's go try that. And when you've got to go report that or explain that to somebody else, and you've got to justify, hey, why did we make this decision? Or why do you want to go purchase that extra thing? All of a sudden it gives you kind of that gut check right there to say, hey, this is not just, we've actually got a plan here. We want to stick to our plan. We want to stick to our annual goals right there, that we're trying to meet these goals. And okay, it's what we're working on right now with our our rock in traction terms kind of a thing here. Is that on the right track and moving the right direction? So having that kind of structure and having that outside accountability really helps. I've seen drive things forward a lot more. That it's always interesting. The companies I walk into that are trying to self-implement, it's like, well, you got a few of the concepts down. You kind of understand a little bit of the terminology. You're way off in left field though, because you didn't understand that aspect or whatever of it.
Yeah. So I think one thing that we've really learned in the recent years too is just that's a form of training. The investment back into training, where that 5 or 7 or whatever it might cost to, or 10, whatever it might cost to have someone in there. That's such a small price in the overall revenue that you're trying to build a company for. And the other thing about traction I realized is, I think entrepreneurs, I'll use this word loosely, ADD or short attention span or shiny syndrome, that 90 days to be able to say, this is the stuff I have to get done in 9 days. And the next 9 days, we'll figure it out based on our year goals. I think that's such a huge thing for entrepreneurs, because we're all, after 90 days, you get bored of something, you move on to something else. So I think it really helps kind of reel you in every 90 days.
Yeah, it really does. It helps keep people focused for sure. It's just getting that shorter time frame, because a lot of times you'll look at your 1 year or even your 3 to 5 year kind of goal, and then it almost goes back to our school days. You get the assignment for the paper. Nobody starts working on it right up until the night before, kind of a thing. And you look at that big goal out there for business and say, how the heck are we going to approach this? How are we going to eat the elephant at that point? So yeah, breaking it back down to the 90 days is really critical. Just to, okay, don't worry about the big picture. Just get this first step done. And it gets you the traction. That's where the name comes from there. But yeah, it's really beneficial there for sure. So I appreciate all the insight, appreciate all the wisdom there. And it's always, like I said, always fun to talk to other business leaders. If people are interested more in yourself, your journey, or the realty market, what's the best place to go about finding you?
Yeah, for sure. I have our website, gcrealtyinc.com, or you could download our podcast at Straight Up Chicago Investor, which you can find on iTunes or at straightupchicagoinvestor.com. Hopefully you'll have my email or contact in show notes. I'm always, I have the mindset of, everything I messed up on, I'm always willing to help other people not mess up on, or at least avoid as big as mess ups as I did. So I have a lot to add. If anyone ever wants to reach out, or if anyone ever wants to contact, I'll always give you my time.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I love that kind of give back mentality, because it's really, does anybody really consider themselves an expert? Or if they do, they probably shouldn't. But it's like there's always going to be somebody that's 2 or 3 steps behind that could learn from even just a little bit there. So I appreciate the offer. That's great. That's definitely what we're looking for. So I appreciate the time, appreciate the insight again. And yeah, we'll definitely get all the contact information here in the show notes right below. So appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Building to Scale podcast. If you would like to share your entrepreneurial business growth story, please visit buildingtoscale.com/guest. If you got something out of this interview, would you do both us and our guest a favor and share it on your social media accounts? Don't forget to hit subscribe in your player so that you don't miss any future episodes, and make sure to reach out to Jeff Chastain on any of the major social media networks, or check us out at admentis.com.